Hey guys, it's Carl Haynard. I know it's been a very long while since I last had a video put out on tutorials and stuff, and first off, I'd just like to apologize for doing that. Second of all, I'd just like to thank you guys so much for your wonderful support of the iMovie HD Make a Cool intro video. It's blown me away how many views that's gotten, and it still has 4.5 stars. Thank you guys so much, seriously. I love it. But anyways, I'm going to show you something more with iPhoto today. And so let's move over to the screencast. You can see that I have this picture here of a pencil that I snapped at school, and you can tell it's got some pretty interesting effects, such as kind of has an outline around it, and you can kind of see the image grain a little more clearly. Some of the color's been washed out, and the depth of field is a little more obvious. I'm gonna just copy these effects just so I don't lose them. But here's what the original picture was. And there's a big difference. So I want to show you how you can get some pretty neat photo effects in iPhoto by tweaking around with the manual settings. And I'll just put these back. Alright, so what you're going to want to do is pick up a photo that you really think you want to express with some more emotional detail. It all depends on you, seriously. So I'm going to go into my school photos, and this is a picture of my friend walking down the hall, and he's an artist like myself, so we have a lot in common. Anyways, so we're going to edit this and make it kind of look a little more different, kind of like the world is centered around him, or a little more bleak. So what we're going to do is go down to this little pencil here called Edit. Then we're going to go to Adjust. And we have this Adjust panel here. You can do a lot with this panel. You can move the right slider to determine how much of the color spectrum is being absorbed. And you can tell they already make a very large impact. And you can also adjust which way the levels kind of tend to adjust themselves. I'll reset everything. So we have our different categories of sliders, like exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, temperature, tint, sharpness, and reduce noise. And we also have this little dropper here to automatically adjust our white point, which you can do on your own. Okay, so I really want to kind of have some similarities to that pencil, but I also want it to be in black and white. So I'm just going to take my saturation and drag that down. So we've got a nice black and white. And we're going to also lower the contrast and lower the exposure. But not to where it's too dark. Like if you lower it that far, it's going to be hard to see your subject. I'm going to move it up a little bit so it's about halfway in between. And then I'm going to take my highlights. You can just tool around with this how you want. And also my shadows. And you can tell it makes some neat outlines. And this is where you're going to want to play with your exposure a bit to make it work. So we kind of have a bit of an outline. I'm just going to make a few tweaks here and there. I'll actually probably add some contrast. And saturation is not really needed here. So we've got our basic color, kind of you can tell a little bit, kind of looks kind of staticky if you look at it, and it's got a lot of image grain now. So we're going to go down to our sharpness, and you can edit this, you can tool around with that all you want, but right now I kind of want to go for a loss of detail. You can clearly see here we have the ridges in the wall. You can tell that the floor actually has a pattern on it, and the mat is clearly legible along with light. Well, we're going to go down to reduce noise and change all that. So we're going to drag that all the way. You can see here that it's completely different. You can hardly see the wall and see that the floor is much smoother. And you're always going to want to play with these settings on your own. So if you go to sharpness, it doesn't make much of a difference because the reduced noise, what it's actually doing is kind of taking an eraser to it, just erasing details so it gets rid of that image noise. And you're gonna want to play around with these settings. I just found by playing with my contrast, it looks much nicer. I can mess with my saturation. You get some pretty weird stuff going on here. So maybe I'll just leave it like this. My exposure, as you can tell, I can get a blind out effect, which I don't really want right now. I'll just leave it here. Let's see if I can mess with my highlights a little bit. My shadows, you can tell that these little settings will make a lot in a photo. So I actually want this to be a little bit brighter, so I'll make my exposure a little bit bigger and kind of reduce the saturation so you just have like that little hint of color. And there you go. You got a very nice emotional picture. So you can just double click it and it'll save it to the hard drive right there. And it looks a little bit blurry while it loads it up. Alright, so I'm going to take you just through a few examples of what I've done with this. Here's one of a fingerprinting kit. Just did a few changes to the contrast. I'm actually going to make a change now. This is another change that you're going to want to use for more expressionist. We're going to go into effects this time. And we're going to pull up this panel here. I'm going to create a vignette, so I'm just going to click that, and there you go, you got a vignette. Ready to go. Now, aperture will probably make that look a lot nicer, but I can't really afford aperture right at this moment. So, let's go to some other photos. Let's see. I have this very funny one that you guys might enjoy from Halloween, if I can find it. There it is. And this was just, let's see what we did to actually make this. What I did was to increase the sharpness, the exposure, and the contrast, pull out my shadows a little bit, and the highlights are really coming out. And the saturation was dropped a little bit just so it looks a little more drawn. And the reduced noise was left low because it makes it a little too blurry and doesn't make enough of a difference to really bother with it, so I'll let it go. So this is some pretty fun stuff you can mess with these photos, and I highly recommend this. Now, one last photo that we're going to edit is this nice chessboard. So we're going to go into edit. Let's go back into effects. I want to make kind of a antique-ish or sepia look. So let's see how sepia looks first. Oh, that looks pretty good actually. Let's go to antique and kind of mess with that. I actually like the sepia better, so we're going to go into that. And let's start here. Go to adjust. And really the only way to get used to these things is just to play with them, really. And I know it might not seem professional. It might sound like I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, in a way you really don't in the world of photography. You just want to play around with it. It's nothing hurting. So, go into your sharpness. I like a sharper image if you can't tell. Highlights, looks a little creepy. Shadows. Yeah, you kind of get an X-ray effect, if you can tell. See? You kind of get like an outline around your thing. Contrast. I'll put that up. Exposure. Put that up as well. Now it's single color, as you can tell, and I can always change my saturation. Temperature, I can make this warmer or cooler. I'll just stick it in the middle. I don't have a real preference. And reduce noise, let's just see how that looks. It doesn't make enough of a change to really make me care. So, I'll probably let that go. And there we go, we just got some pretty nice looking photos if you want to have some more expressionist detail set onto it. So, I hope you guys found that enjoyable, and see you for another tutorial, I suppose.